intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Thanks so much for being with us. Phone number 870-275-9799. 870-275-9799. All right, so interesting interesting day yesterday. You know, as part of our continuing coverage, I guess it's dwindling coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. The news yesterday, a lot of people upset about this one, that the Sanctuary Cities bill has failed before a House committee, the City, County, Local Committee. There was quite the debate about it. It was apparently a 9-5 vote. A 9-5 vote. Needed 11. You got to have 11 yes votes to get something out of a committee. Although I see this AP story stating that you got to have 10, and I don't understand why they're saying that you have to have 10. The latest on a proposal to ban sanctuary cities in Arkansas and cut their funding. Let's see here. The proposal to prohibit cities from refusing to cooperate with federal immigration authorities failed before the House, City, County, and Local Affairs Committee Monday. A 9-5 vote. The measure needed 10 votes to pass. I don't think you need 11 votes. I don't know why they say that. The Senate-backed measure would also have prohibited cities from preventing local law enforcement from asking about someone's citizenship or immigration status. Apparently, this is why Asa didn't support the bill, right? He thought it was going to be a situation like, papers, please. We've been through this before. Do you remember when they said, remember the Arizona governor, and they basically were lying about what the bill said? It's this, you have to go all the way back to Governor Jan Brewer? Was that her name? Remember in Arizona, it was during Obama, and Arizona tries to pass a law, and the left just goes out there and they lie about the bill. They completely misrepresent what the bill says. And they start to say, oh, this is going to make Arizona like the SS. This is going to make Arizona like Nazi Germany, and they're going to be going around, papers, please, and that sort of thing. Apparently, the governor shares that similar fear that you saw back. You got to have a long political memory, but if you go and you actually research and you remember the liberal talking points back when the governor of Arizona, Governor Brewer, you can't sign this bill, and the left they were lying about what the bill said. Very frustrating. And that was a long time ago, too, by the way. It was like when that was what, in 2009, I think, is when that was going on. Arkansas's Republican governor says he wants to change the legislation. It's the sanctuary cities to ensure that it isn't an opportunity for racial profiling. Also what the left said way back in the day about any time you try to police illegal immigration, we can't have any opportunity to racial profile. Again, this false notion that police officers are going to just be going up to people who are Hispanic and asking them for their papers. That's not what would happen in this case. Okay? But, it's weird. With illegal immigration, not only do they come over here illegally, and that's the first law they break, but the second, they come over here and they're bringing drugs with them. Interesting. Does our law enforcement do they ever interact with illegal immigrants who have drugs? Meaning, you pull them over. There's something that happens. You find drugs, and then now that you found drugs, now you can say, hey, by the way, and by the way, the bill in this case is about cities that in the future, and Little Rock's going to, Little Rock wants to become sanctuary cities, like we've seen all over the country, where they tell law enforcement, just ignore it, don't worry about it. And the difference is this, that we as taxpayers are all paying for this. We don't have enough Medicaid dollars right now to pay for those who are truly needy. We don't have enough money to pay for our own people, and we're going to not pass this bill and be left of bang, because there are no cities right now that have ordinances or anything like that. But what about, let's say, well, first of all, you really never know with Medicaid fraud if there are illegal immigrants on Medicaid. I mean, come on, that's a pretty safe bet, right? Wouldn't you take that bet? I mean, if you were able to, like, if there was a magic mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall, how many illegal immigrants are on Arkansas Medicaid? You know you're getting a number back, right? It's not going to be 0. You're getting a number back. Wouldn't you? I mean, how much would you bet? Okay, that's number one. Number two, if you go to the emergency room in this country, you have to be seen. So we're paying for this one way or the other. Anyway, let's actually go to the audio here, and we're going to be playing this all day today. I'm going to be telling you, if you're just joining us, the sanctuary cities bill that got out of the Senate last week, opposed by the governor because he wants an amendment, and then it fails in House committee yesterday, and session's going to be over tomorrow. Here's State Representative Brant Smith before the Committee on City, County, and Local Affairs. Take it away.
Not by coincidence, I suspect, Mara Salvatrucha, you might better recognize them as MS-13, originated in Los Angeles. Later, in San Francisco, California, followed with a City of Refuge resolution in 1985 and then a City of Refuge ordinance in 1989. This ordinance ordered all city employees to stop immigration policing. Following those two cities, we now have approximately 49 cities and 115 counties and 8 states in the United States of America with some sort of sanctuary policy. And to me, somewhat amazingly, all New Mexico County jails and the entire Rhode Island Department of Corrections system are considered sanctuary entities. Rhode Island Department of Corrections, as I said, are considered sanctuary entities. In presenting Senate Bill 411, I seek to address what I believe are the 3 overarching issues related to sanctuary policies. Number 1, simply put, sanctuary policies have the direct effect of preventing our local and state police officers, even those here protecting us at the state capitol, from doing their jobs. When sanctuary policies are in place, police officers cannot investigate, question, or arrest someone who has broken federal immigration laws. If you look at the list of cities and counties with sanctuary policies in place, these are the same cities and counties with some of the worst crime rates, major crimes to that point, in the United States.
He might trigger someone on the committee.
Sadly,
with facts,
sanctuary policies and communities where they are in place harbor criminals, and the direct result of this creation of a dangerous and documented environment for U.S. citizens. Most likely, though you may not remember her name right away, all of us have heard of Kate Steinle. She was murdered by a 5-time deported, 7 felony convicted, undocumented immigrant. In fact, according to public documents, during a single 8-month stretch in 2014 of 8,145 undocumented immigrants released from detention, 63%, or over 5,100 of them, had previous criminal convictions, and close to 4,000 of these were for crimes such as assault, sexual abuse, weapons, drug distribution, and even rape and sexual assault. This all in a single 8-month period. Over 5,100 of them have been known convictions upon their release. Third, sanctuary policies defy federal laws.
Again,
which our city,
State Representative Brant Smith
and
here,
state governmental bodies are bound
making
to comply
sense.
with.
And this bill
And
failed.
let us be clear.
This bill
on this
failed
point,
yesterday.
By interfering and
Supermajority
not
Republicans.
assisting or not reporting to the federal government, federal law is being violated.
Wonder what kind of text messages were being sent during
When
this.
each of us began our service as a legislator, and each time we have been reelected or were elected to other positions, we gave the following oath of office. In my case, I, Brant Smith, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Arkansas, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Arkansas State Representative upon which I am now about to enter. SB 411 is designed to ensure that each of us, do what we have solemnly sworn to do. At the core of this, the situation is really black and white. Your vote in support of SB 411 will ensure that every man and woman on the line protecting us here in Arkansas today are allowed to do their job in a manner consistent with the oath they solemnly swore. The oath you and I solemnly swore to. Your vote in support of SB 411 will ensure you are consistent to your solemn sworn word. And so the title of this bill is simply an act to prohibit municipal sanctuary policies and for other purposes. And with that, the Senate sponsor has come in. I'd like to ask for your permission, Mr. Chairman, to have him join me at the table.
All right, let's stop right there. We're going to so that's State Representative Brant Smith presenting Senator Gary Stubblefield's sanctuary cities, anti-sanctuary cities bill against it. Obviously, it failed out of that committee. I'll give you more specifics as we go throughout the day. The governor opposed the bill because he wanted it amended to make sure. Well, you know what? He opposed the bill because he didn't want racial profiling, is what he said. Okay, this is the exact. It's very frustrating because it's the exact same thing that the left, Democrats and progressives said, years ago when Arizona was attempting to, pass legislation and the left lied about the bill and said it was going to mean that people were going. I don't think that was a sanctuary city bill specifically, but it essentially said it might have been though. Now that I say that, we'll look it up, and I'll look it up right now. But the left just lied about the bill and said it was going to create a Nazi-like environment where you had, you were constantly harassed, constantly asked for papers and that sort of thing. It was ridiculous. Anyway, so the governor didn't support the bill as it was written, and so it failed. I mean, is anyone surprised by this? This is the, like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. That's exactly, it's par for the course. It's like sands through the hourglass. I mean, if Asa wants it, he gets it. If he doesn't want it, he finds a way. He'll text a committee member. He'll get somebody to vote present. He'll get somebody to get up and leave the room. That I'm told that actually happened, or at least there's a report out there. Jan Morgan has a Facebook post that says that. Very frustrating. I mean, why would we not want the authority as the state to defund state funds to our state cities or to our cities if they enact sanctuary policies and refuse to enforce federal immigration laws when they come across an illegal immigrant in their city? Why would we not? Why would we want to continue to give them taxpayer money when illegal immigration costs taxpayer money? And that's all of our money. Why would we want to do that? Why wouldn't the governor support something like that? It's very, very frustrating. So Senator Gary Stubblefield, he comes to the podium next. Again, this is video from yesterday where this sanctuary cities bill failed in a Republican supermajority legislature. They couldn't get this bill out of committee, and session is supposed to be over tomorrow. Listen to this. Here's Senator Gary Stubblefield. Actually, I think he's making his way to the table.
And while he's coming, it's a short bill. It's not that long, about 2 pages. And so I'm going to ask if the senator would like to make any other comments by way of introduction before we take questions.
Okay. Senator, would you identify yourself for the record, please? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee. I appreciate you calling this meeting and allowing us to hear this bill at the 11th hour because it is a very important bill. And let me say something before I go any further. There seems to be a sentiment that because of this bill, somehow we hate people from other countries. Nothing could be farther from the truth. We're all immigrants. When you go back far enough, we're all immigrants. And we want people to come to this country. We need those people to come to this country. But we also have a process by which people come here legally under our laws. And without those laws, we don't have a country. We have anarchy. So, and that process is really very simple. It's not as complex as a lot of people think. If you have some education, you have a skill, you pay $723 for an application, you can become a United States citizen in 5 years or even less. If you marry a United States citizen, you can become a citizen in 3 years or less. And people are standing in line. Thousands and thousands of people are going through that process right now, legally, to become citizens of this country. While at the same time, we have hundreds of thousands that are coming in, and the first act of coming into this country is to break our laws.
Stop.
But
we're going to continue. We're going to continue more of this in a minute. So keep that video right where it is. That's Senator Gary Stubblefield. Before we go to break, I have to. Yeah, that's exactly right. I just got a text message. The "I'm not a racist" defense. I mean, isn't that what I mean? It's once again anything that the left might say to the governor where they could point a finger and say you're for discrimination, and the support just dwindles immediately. But I tell you why I'm really frustrated right now at the governor and his lack of support for this bill, and I'm pretty sure that's what gave sway to the Republicans. I'm very frustrated because we just came off of a weekend where the liberal left progressives lied about the President of the United States. There was a doctored video on Twitter that was selectively edited, and it was a year old, where the president called MS-13 gang members animals. He said that they were less than human, and they doctored it, and then they went around and they edited it to make it look like the president said that all asylum seekers are animals and they're not human. And, leftist Hollywood celebrities, all of it happened all over the weekend, and it was immediately, even PolitiFact, I think, which you can't really even trust them, but even PolitiFact came out and said, yeah, this video is not true. The president, the full remarks, the president was clearly talking about MS-13 gang members. But, you got Hillary Clinton, her former campaign guy, Ben Rhodes. If the leader of any other country said this, we would view it as a horrifying, authoritarian assault on human dignity, which it is. Problem is, he didn't say this. And it goes on and on and on. Judd Apatow, the filmmaker, Nazi. He calls the president a Nazi. Then we have Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, who, by the way, did you see the report about Kirsten Gillibrand's father potentially being in that sex cult? Speaking of that, that sex cult that's in the news, Allison Mack from Smallville, she pled guilty yesterday. Racist language like this, Kirsten Gillibrand said, that has led to violence throughout the world's history. No human being is an animal. We have to be better than this. Again, it's a selectively edited video. So we had all weekend. We came off all weekend from that. And then Arkansas, the state of Arkansas, is trying to run a sanctuary cities bill where we can prevent our cities from doing things that are outside federal immigration law, and the governor won't support the bill, and it failed in committee yesterday, and that's pretty much all she wrote. I'm just, it's just one of those things, Supermajority Republican legislature. We got to take a break. We'll be back here in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Now, some of you probably remember, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think some of you probably remember the debate over whether or not Brett Kavanaugh was fit to be on the Supreme Court. And that outraged a lot of people to see, what happened on the left, what the left did to Brett Kavanaugh's reputation, and how we completely threw out this idea that you are presumed innocent until you're proven guilty, and there's got to be proof, right? So just because somebody says something or makes an allegation, that doesn't mean anything unless we actually have proof. But, the left in this country, they wanted the ends justify the means. They just didn't like the fact that they weren't in control necessarily of who was going to sit on the Supreme Court next. At least that's the way it appears to me.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it was all the way back in 2010. It was an Arizona bill, SB 1070, the Support Our Law Enforcement and Safe Neighborhoods Act. My memory was correct on this, or actually it wasn't correct. It had nothing to do with sanctuary policies, but because U.S. federal law requires that aliens, meaning, legal aliens, older than 18 to possess proper identification at all times, Arizona just decided to adopt what was already federal law. And, of course, the critics of the legislation lied about what the bill said, even though there was specific language in the bill to prohibit race as the sole basis for investigating immigration status, meaning you can't do that. Critics of the legislation they ignored that. The media lied about Arizona Governor Jan Brewer's bill, if you'll remember, back in 2010, and they said that the legislation that was just mirroring federal law encouraged racial profiling. Fast forward to 2019, where sanctuary cities are rampant, illegal immigration is worse than it's ever been. We're trying to save taxpayer money by prohibiting places like Little Rock, because they want to do it, and maybe other cities from becoming sanctuary cities. And the governor comes out and says he doesn't support the bill, doesn't support the legislation, and because of that, the bill failed yesterday in the House committee. I'll bring you more of the audio of it. And we'll bring you more of that later in the program. We're going to be talking with Michael Doherty coming up here in just a minute. The Cybersecurity Education Foundation. We'll be talking to him just a little bit. There's some interesting things in the news that we haven't gotten to talk about in a long time. But this is part of our continuing coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. Oh, the whiteboard. So the whiteboard today, the WB. What's the number? So we're taking guesses. So you feel free to call Joe, 870-275-9799. Feel free to call Joe or text 870-275-9799. Or you can sound off on Facebook, facebook.com/Conduit News. What's the number? Now, what do you think we mean by that? Well, I want the audience, especially those who are listening to this program, have been listening, I want to know what you think the final number will be after the 92nd General Assembly adjourns. How much in tax cuts will we have gotten? How much in tax increases will we have gotten? Really, I want to know how much you think taxes are going up. When it's all said and done, and you take everything that's been done, what's the number? Me. But this idea, it's not something that has just, come up overnight. The idea that you are not innocent until proven guilty is something that's been, happened for a while now. Okay, this is kind of a growing epidemic in this country, and we actually have on the line somebody who has firsthand knowledge of this happening to one of her family members. I want to introduce you to Renee Jolly is on the line. Renee, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And so I'd like for you to just tell your story. You're the parent of a son who was falsely accused by a female student. What tell us about that?
Right. So he was falsely accused and ultimately expelled for sexual assault. And My son's university is still under investigation by the Department of Education Office of Civil Rights for the way that they handled my son's case and his ultimate expulsion. But what we've learned in this experience is that, the school actually withheld evidence from his case in order to find him at fault on the university campus. And they also moved away from due process on the university campus for two reasons, really. The number one reason was, or the first reason was that in 2011, the Department of Education under the Obama administration sent out a Dear Colleague letter to the institutions, university institutions across the United States, stating if they did not clamp down hard on sexual assault allegations, they ran the risk of, or so they thought, of losing federal funding. So there was intense pressure on universities, including my son's, to show that they indeed were taking these accusations seriously, even if it meant wrongly expelling an innocent student, which in my son's case, based on the evidence that was discovered, they did. And then the second thing that they did was what you were alluding to with start by believing, that they use techniques to start by believing the accuser, but when you do that, you in effect are presuming guilt on the accused. And so you get these investigators, and these were campus student conduct investigators, who developed a belief early on that my son was guilty. And so when you have that mindset, you're far more likely to look for anything that assumes their guilt and confirms that preconception, rather than looking at evidence that counters that belief.
Yeah, so instead of start by believing, maybe you just should start by listening, and then you should move on to the investigation phase after that, right, Renee?
Absolutely, yes. There's he said, there's this he said, she said.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
870-275-9799 is the telephone number. If you would like to contribute to the conversation, you can call or text that number. Real quick, going to take a break from our coverage to the 92nd General Assembly, but we're going to get right back into it here in a minute. If you're just joining us, the anti-sanctuary cities bill failed yesterday in the Arkansas House Committee because the governor said he didn't support the bill. The United Nations, I got this headline here from Yahoo News, that the United Nations is sending an expert to visit Julian Assange and to assess whether or not he has had his privacy violated or he's being, spied on or whatever. Or at least those are the some of the allegations. Now, if you want to know where I stand on Julian Assange, I'm grateful for more information, not less, right? So when WikiLeaks gets involved and gives us more information about, who the Democrat Party was, or who the Democratic Party was, who the Clinton emails, or whether WikiLeaks gets involved and reveals all of that the scam where you had all those global leaders that were keeping their money in these certain places, and they were it was all revealed. I mean, sometimes people say Julian Assange is not a journalist. I don't think I agree with that. I don't think I agree with that at all. I think there's been good information that has come out from him, and I think we're better off for it. But that's my opinion. I understand other people have different opinions. But I wanted to have on, welcome back to the program, we've got Michael Doherty. He is the CEO of the Cyber Education Foundation. Michael, welcome back, sir. How are you?
Hey, good being here. How are you, sir? I'm good.
I'm doing fantastic. So what can you tell us about, what's going on right now? Last week we heard that Julian Assange was probably going to get kicked out of the Ecuadorian embassy there in London. Now we're hearing that that's not the case. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is the longest standoff we've seen in as long as I can ever remember, because on the one hand, you've got Julian getting refuge there because he doesn't trust what the U.S. government will do to him if they get their hands on him, because they think they'll hide everything. They'll use every legal loophole. And let's not forget, this started during the Eric Holder School of Law period, where we break every law possible right in your face, admit it, and go, so what are you going to do about it? And so the issue, on the one hand, the Justice Department probably would never get a conviction in a Article III public court in the United States because it would throw the entire press freedom on the table. Because WikiLeaks was operating as a press outfit, and so they don't want to challenge that, right? So they're going to try to get him more on the military side, and he stalled the entire thing. Who knows if that's smart or not, because he's basically been a prisoner already. And so, as a matter of fact, he probably gets less outside exercise than prisoners do. So it's been, an unbelievable checkmate type game. But this absolutely is how, as we see through all these other issues with the Justice Department the past year and a half, listen, these people try to get you and goad you and bait you and beat you before you ever will get to court, so you don't get to court. Because it's easier to use intimidation tactics.
Yeah, you might beat the charge, but you're not going to beat the ride.
Exactly. Persecution through process. Now, that's not to say that really your opinion of Julian Assange should be irrelevant about this. This really is about due process. Like, did O.J. not deserve a trial? Don't you think O.J. is guilty? So, this is how we're seeing that this is how federal law enforcement, federal agencies have worked for decades and decades. J. Edgar Hoover, man. I mean, it's all what they know about you, and it's all a big intimidation racket, whether it's going to be your reputation, your family, your health, your financial status, your spouse, your kids. It's, look at what they did to Mike Flynn. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I think I saw a meme of somebody talking about victims and oppressor and how Michael Flynn is an actual victim. Matter of fact, let me ask you this: we're talking with Michael Doherty. Do you think the same people who are trying to go after Assange at this point, they're the same? It's the same type of people that are trying to basically nullify the 2016 election results. Do you agree with that?
Oh, sure. It's interesting. Not in the beginning. But it's an interesting point because hell has no fury like a Democrat who feels like he's been scorned. And they just assumed that he was a Democrat and on Hillary's side until he wasn't. And then they had their own agenda, and they went after people around him because they couldn't get to him. His head PR guy had an entire Me Too scam put on him, Trevor Fitzgibbon. And had his life ruined, and he's trying to rebuild it now, just because this is what the media matters, destroy you politics that don't go along to get along does to you. So now, yes. In the beginning, no, because they all thought they were on the same side. One of the few people on the left who actually calls the left out on this is Glenn Greenwald.
Yes.
Who is really merciless on the hypocrisy because he's a journalist first. But he lives in Brazil. He has his own platform. He's already, he has his own company. He's safe from their claws. But it's up to the American public to put their foot down on this. These people have to get elected out of the system, and it'll take a long time to do it because they've been allowed to build within the system for a century. So it's like, you'll get the weeds out of the garden overnight.
So you're an expert in cybersecurity and everything else. I mean, so I think it's safe to assume that everything Julian Assange does is being, recorded. He's being watched. Everything he does in the Ecuadorian embassy. You agree with that?
Yeah, sure. And then they've cut him off. Ecuador, since there's a political change in Ecuador, they've cut him off. And so it's been very difficult. And now the press has really left Julian. I mean, this is one of the very few, media interviews I've done about Julian. Most people just don't. I mean, the press is ironic. It is about. It just shows how political the U.S. media is because they should be all over this because they're trying to strip someone of their power, but the media really isn't the media anymore. It's in their self-interest that Julian not get punished, or they will be able to be punished later down the road.
Well, at this point, let me bring this up, Michael. At this point, I mean, Julian Assange is on record saying that his source was not the Russian government with those emails, but the mainstream media narrative that they say that it is fact that 100% it was the Russians that hacked the Democrat Party. But if Julian Assange is right, then that's not true.
Well, that doesn't matter if it's true to the mainstream media. They'll just look what they've done with the Mueller report. I mean, there was not a millisecond of reflection. There might have been a millisecond of shock. Then they just took another breath and spun another lie, because that's what they do. You know, these people are not about the truth. They're about circle and confuse and power.
Gosh. Do you think that if something happens and Julian Assange, gets arrested and swept away to some non-public military situation, does he have somebody with like a finger on a button somewhere where he just releases everything?
Well, they systematically try to go after people that they know in the network that support him, but I think you will still see hell hath no fury. I think that's the other part of the checkmate. That's why we're stuck in check here. We've heard these things before, and I think the biggest thing that they're trying to do is just wait him out till he gets sick and dies.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah, and you never know. You can never ride out. I mean, what you can never ride off what possibly might happen. This is interesting. So the United Nations is sending some expert to visit Assange. What's that all about?
Well, it's about a human rights issue, and and it's an interesting turn. It politicizes it again, and it shows consequence to anybody if they actually play this type of Sopranos goes to Washington narrative. So it's just there are political entities in the world that do want Julian to be safe. Now it's interesting because he really has been very brave. He doesn't care who in the world he can tick off at a world leadership level. He's made himself the sacrificial lamb. I don't know if he knew he was doing that. But these Panama Papers, I mean, there's not a dictator in the world, and there's a lot of dictators in the world that are thrilled with Julian Assange, except if they can use him as a pawn to really tick off the United States. So.
Wow. Michael Dougherty, we really appreciate you coming on the program. It's always great to talk to you and kind of getting a take on this international story. Like you said, nobody's really paying attention to Julian Assange. It's probably because he's got the equivalent, the journalistic equivalent of like the nuclear codes. And so who knows what else he might release. Michael, I appreciate it, sir.
All right. Good talking to you. Thanks for having me, sir.
Folks, we're going to reset here. Going to continue with our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. You're not going to believe this, though. So the state tries to pass yesterday a sanctuary cities bill that would prohibit, so it's anti-sanctuary cities. It would prohibit a city like Little Rock from adopting policies that says they don't have to enforce or uphold federal immigration laws. Very similar to what you see other big cities do, like Los Angeles and other places. The governor comes out kind of at the last minute and says, I don't support this bill unless it's amended because of racial profiling. And then the bill dies in committee, and the legislative session, is supposed to end sometime tomorrow. So this is a mess, in my opinion. Who knows? Now, there's a slight chance, I guess, you could amend it, and then maybe the full House could try to yank it out of committee, but you got to have a pretty big threshold to do that. So we'll wait and we'll see. We're going to reset here, take a break, and I'm going to bring you the video and audio from yesterday, and we'll pick back up with Senator Gary Stubblefield and his bill, again, that would have prohibited sanctuary cities in Arkansas. It would have allowed the state to cut off funding for cities that adopt those types of policies. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
And so you get these investigators, and these were campus student conduct investigators, who developed a belief early on that my son was guilty. And so when you have that mindset, you're far more likely to look for anything that assumes their guilt and confirms that preconception rather than looking at evidence that counters that belief.
Yeah, so instead of start by believing, maybe you just should start by listening, and then you should move on to the investigation phase after that, right, Renee?
Absolutely, yes. There's he said, there's this he said, she said, but you have to look at the evidence, what the evidence shows. And in my son's case, there was very, very specific evidence, including eyewitness statements from even the girl who accused my son from her friends, who cleared my son's side of the story or corroborated his side of the story.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I just think, I tell you what, you know what's hilarious to me is that, people pass bills without knowing what the consequences are all the time, right? They pass bills that they'll give $20 million without a second thought to a stump fire that, in Bella Vista or wherever that is, that's somebody else's fault, okay, without any debate. And then you have something like a sanctuary cities bill, and you might have somebody with a question was like, well, are you really sure that the Attorney General needs the responsibility of determining whether someone is a sanctuary city, and maybe we should, maybe that's not going to work out too well. And then they'll use that as an excuse to vote against the bill because there's maybe one little thing that you're not sure of how things are going to work out. And that's the truth with all kinds of legislation. But if it's conservative, if it grows government and we don't know how things, and you've got Dan Douglas who said that, the internet sales tax estimates are, quote, a wild-ass guess. You have that. Nobody cares about, we may not know everything this bill's going to do or exactly how it's going to work out. If it grows government and they don't know, well, that's fine. We'll vote for it anyway because they're told to do it. But if it's something that's on the conservative agenda and the bill might have things in it where you're like, well, how is this real? How exactly? Then all of a sudden, these people are the highest skeptics, and they will use any little thing as an excuse to vote against it, and they're just using it as a scapegoat, if you will. Here is Senator Gary Stubblefield trying to get the House committee yesterday on city, county, local affairs to pass his bill, which they didn't because I'm told some Republicans didn't vote, or some Republicans just got up and left the room when it was time to vote. Now, maybe there's explanations for that. I don't know, but the bottom line is the governor doesn't support the bill. He came out and said he didn't support it unless it was amended, and then the bill failed. Here's Senator Gary Stubblefield from yesterday.
I don't know, Mr. Chairman, how much you want me to talk, but I will.
You can talk as long as you like.
All right. When those people come into this country illegally, sometimes we forget that there's a lot of other ramifications involved as far as the amount of drugs that are brought in. Just this last year, in the year 2018, border agents seized 282,000 pounds of cocaine. Now, this is last year in the last 12 months. They seized 2,400 pounds of fentanyl. That is enough fentanyl to kill every citizen in the United States of America, all 325 million of us, in that one bust. They also seized 248,000 pounds of methamphetamines, 6,500 pounds of heroin. That's a total of 1.7 million pounds of drugs. And let me tell you something, committee. Those drugs don't just go to Chicago and New York and Baltimore and Los Angeles and San Diego. They also come to Little Rock and Hot Springs and Pine Bluff and West Helena and Fort Smith. They go all over our state. And the cost of those drugs, it's hard to put a dollar amount on it because the millions and millions of dollars that we spend in the state on health care and rehab, on treating those whose lives have been impacted by these drugs as a result of not securing our borders. It amazes me about how many more of our citizens have to suffer needlessly. I mean, what is the magic number of victims it will take before we become proactive in dealing with this issue? I grew up on a farm all my life, and I grew up in the 50s and 60s. We had a disease called brucellosis back in the 50s and 60s. Some of you who farm are familiar with that. It was a disease, though, that you could vaccinate for, and it would prevent it. A lot of farmers, some did, a lot didn't. And those that didn't, most of those, once one cow was detected as having that disease, that entire herd was quarantined and destroyed, putting many farmers out of business. You have to be proactive. And the thing about it is, I heard this the other day in testimony in the Senate, that this is a solution looking for a problem. Let me tell you something. When you talk to the families that I have talked with the last 3 or 4 weeks, and the ones who have lost loved ones, and the ones who have been injured, had children and family members who have been injured all by illegal immigrants. Just in the last couple of weeks, a young 13-year-old girl was ran over in Alabama on her way to school riding her bicycle by an illegal immigrant. That's not a solution looking for a problem. Or the young girl in Alabama, a 12-year-old girl that was raped by an illegal immigrant who had been deported twice. That's not a solution looking for a problem. So this is not a solution looking for a problem. This is to ward off what could happen, what is happening all over our country. Every state surrounding Arkansas has already passed this law. We already know that California is handing out millions of IDs to illegal immigrants. The only difference here is they're allowing those immigrants to vote with those IDs. Do you think that's not coming here at some point in the future? You think that's
local
not
elections?
that's not going to be allowed
Probably
here
federal
at some
elections.
point in the future with those IDs?
Matter of fact, stop. Just real quick, leave this up here.
with
For a
that-
sec. I just want to pause. I saw a map the other day, and it was it was two different maps, and they looked almost exactly the same, where it had all of the blue states that win for Hillary, and then that was compared to all of the states that give illegal immigrants driver's licenses. Now, obviously, that's a huge leap, okay? That's a huge statistical leap, right? Because there's a lot of Democrat, but some of those states, not like California, but some of those states that give illegals driver's licenses that are not quite as like solidly blue as California or New York, but some of the middle, some of the Midwest, thinking things like Colorado and that sort of thing. You at least wonder. You say like, well, how exactly, how many illegal aliens are voting in federal elections? The left says none. Well, there's no. You can't prove it. Well, you don't know. We don't know what we don't know. The whole concept is that they're getting away with the crime. Anyway, keep it going here. This is again Gary Stubblefield. This bill failed out of the House yesterday.
I will close, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Representative Dalby, you're recognized for a question.
Here's Representative Dalby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Representative, for bringing this bill to us. I think it's an important bill. I am, though, interested in discussing Section C1, which is line 13 through 34 on page 2. If you can get to that, because I am concerned.
With this graphic, it looks like I'm on the committee.
The Attorney General, they become the fact finder. When
Point
you
of
read
order.
that whole thing all the way down through 34, line 34, it appears that we're going to be requiring the Attorney General to issue an opinion, which is basically a fact finding as to whether or not a municipality has policies in violation of this section. And so if you could you speak to me, because that does concern me. I understand, I think what you're trying to do is create a mechanism for there to be either a hearing or an appeal or something like that. But anytime I've ever asked for an Attorney General's opinion, the first words are, we are not finders of fact. And this appears that that's what we're requiring them to do. So could you speak to that? Is that what you're doing here?
Yes, I could. And the first thing I think we need to understand is this is not granting authority to law enforcement. And by the way, in order for this to work, and even Congress recognizes this now because we've had 30 years of promises from the federal government, both parties. There's no question that our immigration system is broken, and they have failed to fix it. And now they have finally recognized that states are going to have to step up with local law enforcement in order to help them to fix this problem because it's gotten so out of hand. But these cases you're referring to,
Arkansas could do its part.
We're talking about individuals who have broken the law as far as some of our laws. We're not talking about someone who's pulled over for speeding, because this does not profile anyone. If you're pulled over for speeding, this bill prohibits a law officer from profiling that individual because they look a certain way. If you
there you go. Well, okay.
On line 11.
Stop. All right.
We're
going to pick right back up where this is. So if you're pulled over for speeding, now I was referencing the Arizona bill earlier from 2010, but Gary Stubble said if you're pulled over for speeding, this bill prohibits you from racial profiling. Man, what the left, man, the progressive. So the governor didn't support it because it might lead to racial profiling. Back in a minute.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Yet the school chose to leave that off of the final investigation report. again, because of the pressures they were under by the Obama administration and the fact that their training really ensued on this Start by Believing. And Start by Believing really is a mission. It's a global campaign described as on their website as transforming the way we respond to sexual assault. And it's well-funded to the tune of $9 million over the past 8 years by the Department of Justice. And it's under the umbrella of End Violence Against Women International, which is a laudable cause to end violence against women, because for too many years the pendulum had swung over to where women did not feel that they were being adequately believed and their claims were not being investigated. But the problem is we've now swung the pendulum the other way, but you can't really fix one problem by creating another, and that's exactly what we've done.
Well, I guess I wonder, because it just dawned on me, it's an odd campaign title, Start by Believing. So, if women tended to not be believed, I'm curious as to why. I mean, I don't think necessarily, I think stereotypes exist, for example, because a lot of times they're reinforced every day. And that doesn't mean you need to, interact with people based on that, because that's wrong. But, people have, ideas of notions. So there are false claims out there, right? I mean, that's the only reason why you would have to have a campaign about, sexual assault against women called Start by Believing. If there are people that don't believe it, it may be because there's a lot of instances where someone is claiming sexual assault that it didn't actually happen. Now, I mean, I don't mean that to be offensive, but that's just logically where, what do you say to that, Renee?
Yeah, I completely agree, because why should we believe women any more than we should believe any man? It's, it's an outgrowth of Me Too. This movement says we must first believe all women's allegations of sexual harassment, but then we forget about the presumption of innocence, or the possibility she could be unbelievable once the evidence was reviewed. So Start by Believing is scary. It's really moving us away from our constitutional protections of presumption of innocence. It's leading to very biased investigations, and it's convicting innocent people, because this campaign is not only being rolled across the university campuses, it's also being rolled out to criminal justice professionals across the United States. But yet there's been quite a bit of backlash from criticisms to this type of training. From the U.S. Air Force is denouncing this type of training, saying that it's it's not a good or fair method. It's being denounced by the Governor's Commission in Arizona, stating the same, that they do not want it rolled out across their state. So it's scary, but yet people are jumping on the training that is available, and it's not good for our country, and it's not good for the rights that we have constitutionally protected.
So the left is putting this out. You got to believe women. Now, I will tell you this: that you can believe men, but only if you are Jussie Smollett and you're a gay black guy at 3 a.m. Then you will be believed for a time, at least, until the scam kind of just is exposed to everybody. But we're talking with Renee Jolly again. Her son was wrongly accused and then kicked out of school. I got this written here, Renee. A national survey found that 1 in 10 persons reported they had been falsely accused of sexual assault, domestic violence, or child abuse. Then 2,382 exonerations have been documented to date, representing nearly 21,000 person years lost. False accusations and perjury are a leading contributor to wrongful convictions. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so those are accurate numbers, and the first thing that comes to mind when those are read is just how sad it is that these people have lost so much of their freedom and their protections, and that's really, again, a testament to why it's so important to have unbiased, thorough, and fair investigations. That police detectives take an oath, and they're expected to conduct investigations like that, and they're based on principles of honesty and impartiality. But when you move away from that type.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. Welcome back to the program. This is hour number 2, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. We are bringing you live coverage or a live reaction to what happened yesterday at the 92nd General Assembly. I mean, it's kind of the final countdown, if you will. You know, da-da-da-da. Anyway, the final countdown, it's supposed to end tomorrow sometime, and this is Senator Gary Stubblefield. This is over at conduitnews.com. You can click on the headline, and the ban on sanctuary cities in Arkansas failed in the House committee yesterday after passing a Senate committee and the full Senate last week. A proposed ban on sanctuary cities up at conduitnews.com right now failed in the House committee after Governor Asa Hutchinson stated that he wanted to see measures which would prevent racial profiling. The ban had already passed the Arkansas Senate and would have preemptively set parameters in place to defund any Arkansas city which passed public policies not compliant with federal immigration laws. Can you just hear the common sense in that idea? The House committee voted 9-4 in opposition of the ban. Oh, it says 10 votes were needed for the ban to go before the full House. See, I'm pretty sure it takes 11 votes. It's strange there. Let's see here. Anyway, the AP said the same thing earlier. I just don't think that's right. But anyway, let's see. The Attorney General would have had the power to decide which cities are sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants. Texas passed similar legislation over 2 years ago. Check it out. They're taking questions. This is going to be kind of, we've heard from State Representative Brant Smith, who presented the bill. Senator Gary Stubblefield also presented the bill, and now they're going to take questions. They're in the middle of a question right now from State Representative Carol Dalby. Listen to this.
He said it prevents law enforcement officers from asking a person about his or her citizenship or immigration status. But if an individual is arrested on drug offenses or some other more serious offense or crime, certainly, then they have to use probable cause, but they still are given the right to inquire about their citizenship. That should be reasonable.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not disputing that, Senator. The part that is concerning to me, and maybe it's just because of my legal background, but the part that's concerning to me is, once there's a complaint made about a violation of a municipality, then it says the Attorney General shall issue an opinion stating whether the municipality is in violation of this section. And all that before it, I understand. I'm not disagreeing at all. It's just from there on, it appears to me, and that's what I'm really concerned about, is are we now making the Attorney General a fact finder, which is in violation of what they can do under our Constitution? And I don't want, and that's really the heart of my question is, right, does the Attorney General become a fact finder? And if the Attorney General becomes a fact finder, maybe there's a better mechanism for complaints to be heard. Is my question.
Right, and I understand what you're saying. And this does permit the Attorney General's office to look into this and to see if there's a municipality that has done something that makes them ineligible to receive discretionary state funds. Actually, this wording came from a North Carolina law, which they use, and some of the other laws that have been enacted by states surrounding us. And if we can make this better, Later on, I would be more than willing to change some of the language. I know I've spoken to the governor concerning some language involving probable cause, and I told him that I would be glad to change that. And other than that, he said he had no issue with it. And
thank you.
I'm always willing to change a bill to make it better.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. We may need to kind of tweak that at some point in the future,
Exactly.
but I appreciate that, Senator. Thank you.
Yeah, Representative Whitaker, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, and whoever wants to answer it, or if you both want to take a crack at it, do you have a list of cities in Arkansas that have enacted such ordinances?
I'll start out and then I'll defer to my colleague. What we know right now in the state of Arkansas is there are things happening within the state, specifically in Little Rock, that it's not, there's not been an ordinance or a city ordinance put in place, but funding and some measures have been enacted, basically kind of off the record, to not go after some of these illegals that are in our state. And so I don't know if the councilman is here, but one of the councilmen came and spoke during the Senate hearing, and he talked about the problem specifically that Little Rock is experiencing right now.
Follow up?
Yes, follow up.
Your proposed bill talks a lot about passing ordinances or resolutions or whatever, about finding cities in noncompliance for the official acts of their
stop right
governing
here.
body.
All right, so this is Democrat Whitaker, state rep. No, leave the thing up. This is Democrat Whitaker. I want to see. I want you to understand something. There's a lot of backlash going on right now. A lot of people are getting backlash because this bill failed, and some people are getting backlash and it's not warranted. Okay. So at least from what I'm told here, and this is a simple Google search here, you see that state representative right there, the woman right there. That's State Representative Sarah Capp. Okay, she isn't on the committee. Okay, so we want to be factual here. Okay, State Representative Sarah Capp is not on the committee. And so she received, from what I can tell, she has received some unfair criticism because I think at some point she got up and left. But so what happens is the culture down there is if you're a state representative, you can sit in on committees. It happens all the time. When you're not in the MAC building and you're in the the long table, the rectangular table, a lot of times state representatives who are not on the committee will kind of sit on the window or they'll stand on the side of the committee or whatever because they're just listening. That's exactly what Sarah Capp is doing right there. So she didn't even have a vote. So when she gets up and leaves, that's not. I just want everybody to understand. Politicians obviously need to understand that people are very sensitive, and a lot of times we don't fully understand the process, and that's one of the reasons Conduit News is here, and we want to set the record straight. So anyway, just wanted to make that point about State Representative Sarah Capp. Let's continue here. Go ahead and press play.
You're talking about. There's rumors that somebody might be doing it on the side. So how would this stop them if they don't actually reduce it to an ordinance?
First of all, there's not a rumor, Representative Whitaker. Little Rock passed out 600, I think they're up to 1,100 now, IDs to illegal immigrants at a cost of $180,000. That's already taken place. So that's not a rumor. And when you think about it, cities and municipalities tend to follow other cities and municipalities' lead, just like we pass laws and we say, well, Missouri's already passed it, Tennessee's passed it, Cities tend to do the same thing. And before long, you have other cities adopting the same policies as Little Rock, who have already passed out 1,100 IDs to illegal immigrants at a cost of $180,000 to the taxpayers of the state. So that's not that's a fact. That's not an assumption.
Follow up.
So your answer is not one single city or town has adopted any such ordinance in this state, and that's what you said, right?
Well, let me give you an example.
Thank you.
No one in Los Angeles, no one in California knew what a sanctuary city was until 5 years after Los Angeles had already adopted sanctuary city policies. And that was the first city in the United States where MS-13 originated. But nobody knew that Los Angeles was a sanctuary city. They had already put in place the things that are starting to happen here. This is a proactive bill, it really is. And sure, you're right. I don't know of any cities that have come out openly and adopted sanctuary policies. And like I said, you know, I didn't know any of my cows might have had brucellosis either until I took one and they pulled blood and determined it was positive, and I had to sell the whole herd. So this is trying to ward off something before it happens. Representative Whitaker, I hope that answered your question.
Okay. Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to Representative Smith and Senator Stubblefield. I just want to begin by asking, now, would you not consider this a local rule issue? Ordinances that we pass, aren't these local rule issues?
It really is a local issue because it's local to each city and county, their local governments. They will be in charge, and they will be the ones to determine what path or what direction they want to go in as far as this ordinance. But this sets out some guidelines to tell them that we can't do this under state law.
Okay, but shouldn't it be left up to a city if they want to enact whatever policy that they would have? I mean, if you went back to your home city, which is Branch, and you wanted to enact a rule in which Little Rock we didn't want to enact in here, shouldn't your citizenry have the right to enact whatever laws that they would have or deem necessary?
As long as that law they enacted did not put a monetary cost on the citizens of the rest of the state, I would say yes. But this is costing all of us. We're all paying for this. Okay. Whether it be through drug rehab, whether it be through, we're always looking for Medicaid dollars to take care of the people we have in our, we don't even have enough money to take care of our own citizens.
So does
we have
Medicaid,
people in this state that are hungry.
Senator, does Medicaid go to someone who is undocumented?
Well, how would you know that?
But that answer.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you go to a emergency room, do they turn you down?
Excellent.
Are you turned down when you go to an
Excellent
emergency room?
Question. You need to be asking the questions.
Gary asking the committee questions.
So what I'm saying.
All right, stop.
My point was.
I'm told now. We actually have. And sorry, things are very busy. We're getting phone calls right now, and I apologize. I'm so sorry for people who are calling and trying to give us stuff. But we are we're a skeleton crew here, and so I apologize. But this is why we had to cut some phone conversations short, is because right now I'm told we have State Representative Brant Smith on the line. Brant, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm alive and kicking this morning.
Barely. No. You did a great job, sir. You did a great job yesterday trying to present this bill. So what can you tell us about it? What are your thoughts about it failing yesterday, this anti-sanctuary cities bill?
Well, Paul, in all honesty, what I'm thinking is even the Democrats in the state of Arkansas are blind to what's really happening, not only on our southern border, but within the borders of our own state. They bought into the rhetoric that we hear on national news, such as Fox, about there's no problem on the border, open it up, let everybody come in. But as Senator Stubblefield mentioned yesterday, even if we just simply look at the drug problem in the state, enough fentanyl is brought across that border, which eventually, much of it makes its way into our state. Heroin, and other drugs, cocaine, marijuana. And so we do have a problem at the border, and we're not looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. We have a problem, and it's become almost, and I would equate this to a war zone. And so the Democrats, they simply choose not to see, or they're wearing rose-colored glasses, because as I was sitting there yesterday, I was thinking, what would their attitude be if one of their family members was injured or murdered
like
illegals.
Like one of these angel families or angel moms.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If they became a victim, would their attitude change, or would they still maintain their rosy outlook on let's just let everybody come in? And I think it would change dramatically, but it may be too late.
Yeah, so this bill, again, it would just allow the state to cut off funding if a city decides to not enforce federal immigration laws. You did a great job talking about the birth of MS-13, the beginning of these sanctuary policies. So the bill failed, though, Brant. It only got 9 votes, and so what happens now? Session's about to end, and you know we have some Republicans that didn't vote. Some Republicans had to get up and leave for whatever reason. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as I mentioned to a couple of colleagues, or they mentioned to me rather, there are some processes in place for such a move to extract the bill, and so out of committee and bring it straight to the floor. And the only reason I'm kind of tipping my hand on that is my phone has blown up over the last several hours, just people saying, hey, there is recourse. And so
recourse, okay.
I may be able to do that, and the bill only failed by one vote, and for whatever reasons, I was told they were all legitimate reasons, so I have to take that as true. But I think if we can get this bill to the House floor, that it will pass in a major way.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It just had to get over that committee hurdle yesterday, and it didn't happen. It's a shame when you listen to an entire debate and then you get up and you don't actually, you're not actually there to vote. So, best of luck to you, Brant. I appreciate what you've done. I appreciate you calling in, at the spur of the moment, and hopefully, hopefully the House will take advantage of their supermajority status here and go ahead and pass what is a very important. Because your colleague Senator Stubblefield, I'll give you the last word, Brant. He was taking that question from Democrat Fred Love, or anyway about this is a cost to all taxpayers, and is what Gary said. Because if an illegal immigrant goes to the emergency room, guess what? We're all paying for that one way or the other.
Well, and there was a lot of discussion around that type of thing, but we have so many people that their first line for medical care here in the state is to go to the emergency room, and that was supposed to all change with the private option and with Arkansas Work, but I would venture to say that it probably didn't diminish the numbers very much. And so my gratitude to Senator Stubblefield, I just can't express how much I appreciate him. And he's a man of integrity, a great man, a great servant to the people. And so for him to ask me to carry the bill on the House side, I take that very seriously. And I'm not done yet. We're going to see what happens today, and perhaps we'll get this bill through.
Absolutely. I certainly hope so. I know the people of Arkansas, this is the most important thing, people of Arkansas want you to get this bill through. Brant, best of luck to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
All righty. That's Brant Smith calling in, and he, of course, was in front of that committee yesterday. We're gonna give you more coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. We're going to take a break, though. Reset, come back in just a moment. 82 exonerations have been documented to date, representing nearly 21,000 person years lost. False accusations and perjury are a leading contributor to wrongful convictions. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so those are accurate numbers, and the first thing that comes to mind when those are read is just how sad it is that these people have lost so much of their freedom and their protections, and that's really, again, a testament to why it's so important to have unbiased, thorough, and fair investigations that Police detectives take an oath, and they're expected to conduct investigations like that. And they're based on principles of honesty and impartiality. But when you move away from that type of fairness, you are going to be taking away a lot of life from these people, and it's wrong, and it needs to be stopped.
Money, power, prestige, essence, available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism. The aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal deception. Deep state. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So the constitutional measure to make it harder for citizens to change the Constitution seems like that's getting the go-ahead. In the last week of the 2019 legislative session in Arkansas, a proposed constitutional amendment would limit citizens' rights by making it harder for the public to amend the state constitution. HGR 1008 is a proposed constitutional amendment that would make it harder for citizens-led initiatives to propose and pass constitutional amendments to the Arkansas Constitution. Currently, signatures from at least half of the eligible voters in 15 of Arkansas' 75 counties must be collected to make it on the ballot. This amendment would increase that rate to 3/5 of all counties, or 45 of all counties, 45 of 75. It would also require all measures to be submitted by January 15th of the election year, moving up the due date by almost 6 months. The bill does not decrease the number of referred constitutional amendments the legislature can propose, currently 3 each legislative session. And boy, do they always make sure to refer 3. All this talk about, we got to leave our Constitution alone, we changed it too many times. That's because the legislature can't not continue to change the Constitution. It does raise the threshold to pass referred amendments from a simple majority to 3/5. So at least it does that. So it will be more difficult for them to refer something out to us. But I will tell you the main thing about this. They think that there's an abusive process between casinos and medical marijuana of well-funded special interests being able to manipulate the initiative process to change the Constitution. Now, that is a problem. I mean, it clearly is something that's an occurrence that has happened. But here's the thing. The big moneyed interests, they certify all 75 of 75 counties anyway because they got the money. So bringing it from 15 counties to 45 counties is only going to hurt the true grassroots efforts, the little guy. The big guys are going to be able to still do anything. They're still going to be able to get whatever they want on the ballot if you've got enough money to do it. So this doesn't actually solve the problem they're claiming it does. You mentioned earlier, or I think you mentioned earlier, $1.4 million right now, the U.S. Department of Justice is sending to this Start by Believing campaign. Is that right?
Yes, that was actually just in the past year or so.
Wow.
Since 2011, it's been nearly $9 million. And we've gone against their and sent letters to the Attorney General, William Barr, asking him to stop the funding for these sham Start by Believing trainings. Because it's under the umbrella of End Violence Against Women, and the Department of Justice is a vast department. We are trying to bring awareness to him on really what they're funding, because he may not have any specific idea on what is being rolled out.
Gosh.
And their training material, it's online. It's available for anybody to see. And it tells in the training material, it tells the participants to conceal inconsistencies in the complaint and statement to minimize the risk of contradiction. It tells them to make sure the sexual encounter does not look like a consensual sexual experience. It tells them to slant the investigation report to focus on evidence that serves to corroborate the victim's account. And your listeners are welcome to go on a website to view this, and that would be going to saveservices.org. That's Save Stop Abusive and Violent Environment, services.org. And they can read this, and they can also click on a link to sign a petition to support stopping this type of training.
I think they definitely need to, Renee, and it's strange. I guess last question, it is strange to me. You're on this program standing up for fairness and standing up for due process when it comes to trying to determine whether or not a crime has been committed. And isn't that odd? I mean, what does that say? What do you think the end game is? Because obviously this is about an agenda. You don't try to change this concept, this sacred concept of that you're innocent until proven guilty, unless there's some sort of end game, in my opinion. I know it's a speculative question, but what do you think about that?
I scratch my head as well. Why, as a country, we have moved away from the tenets of constitutional protections. We are calling people victims or before they've even been proven to become a victim. And, whether someone's a victim is a conclusion to be made at the end of a fair process, at the end of an investigative process. It's not an assumption made at the beginning. But yet, that's exactly what we're doing. And it's
the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. In the home stretch here. Now, let's go ahead and because I guess this is the last week of the General Assembly, so we're told. They're going to adjourn, and then they'll have a cooling off period. We can all try to recover, look at our wallets, maybe try to work a little harder so we can make up all the money that they've taken from us. Then they'll come back in May. But anyway, because this is the last week, we need to go to Josh Waters. Josh is on the phone with us right now. Josh, how are you this morning, sir?
Hey, Paul, I'm pretty good. I'm probably like you, most people. I'm excited. This is the last week of the session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I am as well. But I the whiteboard today says, and the rest of the week, what's the number? Because I want to know from the folks out there, and they can text us or they can call us or leave us voice messages or whatever. I want to know from the folks out there what they think the final number will be when it comes to the net tax increase on the people of Arkansas after the legislature is adjourned. And just go ahead. I mean, just, throw it out there. There's plenty of articles. Do the math. I'm just curious. Eventually, we're going to put out a number, I'm sure. But, Josh, when it comes to economic issues, it has been kind of a bumpy session, to say the least.
Yeah, Paul, I wrote down a list last week and just wanted to read off of that, some good, some bad, just kind of highlights of the session that, we'll put numbers to later. But, your gas bill went up this session. Your phone bill went up this session. Your water bill may be going up this session. Your internet purchases bill went up this session. Cigarette bill went up a little, not as much as what could have been. The half-cent sales tax is going to be voted on. If that goes through, you're going to see that increased sales tax rate. They rejected lower used car tax bill. Now, there was some good. It was a good income tax bill this session. $97 million income tax for top earners in the state, bringing that down 1%. There's improvement on campus free speech. There's improved free speech on campus. Scope of practice bills. Most of those were killed. There's increased spending, $124 million. The Medicaid extension work requirement was struck down, but that wasn't changed. The age to smoke was raised. There's some really good pro-life bills passed, so that was good. And then there's a bill to address term limits. And so those are kind of some of the highlights I had written down of the session. So a lot of big issues. And then, of course, the transformation bill was the biggest bill of the session. And that kind of is yet to be seen exactly how that plays out in overall savings. But, Paul, those were some of the very biggest issues of this session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that transformation bill, I think, is a 2,000-page bill, so it's very complicated. I know they worked the entire session on that. And you mentioned something just now, and I was reading this in the paper this morning, $120 million spending increase. This goes right along with the average. A little bit. I mean, you've had, since Governor Hutchinson's been in office, spending increases of $133 million, 140, 160, 170. Now another $124 million. It's pretty frustrating,
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. This under these last 8 fiscal years under this governor, we're on pace to increase spending by over $1 billion still. So we'll see where that comes out. But that is the RSA that the legislature will be voting on today on the House and Senate floor as they wrap things up this week. $124 million increase, and that's just state general revenue. There's a lot of different special revenues that are spent, and there's a ton of federal money. So when you combine all that, the state revenue that they're voting on is about $5.7 billion, and then we combine all the taxpayer money. We're looking at $25 billion total to run the state of Arkansas.
Wow. I mean, it's a gargantuan amount of money. All right, well, so let's get to the scorecard. This is the last scorecard, unless, something happens unforeseen. Week number 12. There's only one bill on it. Tell us about it, Josh.
Yeah, so session's wrapping up. Just one bill this week, and it's the third proposed constitutional amendment. So every legislative session, the General Assembly, the legislators, they're allowed to send out and propose 3 constitutional amendments. This is their third one. The ones they've already put out that will be on the general election ballot are one, extension of the half-cent sales tax, and then the second is the term limits bill. And this is the third one. And basically, Paul, the best way to understand this is it's going to be making it harder on citizens of the state to pass initiatives to amend the Arkansas Constitution. So right now, people can go out there and get signatures, and they have to get a majority of signatures from 15 of Arkansas' 75 counties, and a total number overall, but 15 of 75 counties have to have that majority number. This takes that measure to 45 of the 75 counties. It also makes people turn in these initiatives sooner, and there's no cure period. So previously, a lot of people have seen is, you turn in 100,000 signatures, or whatever the number is, and then for whatever reason, a government actor, Secretary of State in the past, has struck and said, no, these signatures are no good. The way you got the signatures here are no good. These are not actual residents of the state, whatever the reason is. So they'll strike 20,000. But if they hit that minimum threshold, they got some additional time. So that's going away. So at the end of the day, this measure really makes it harder for citizens to amend the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, and I was mentioning earlier the concept that a lot of these big these big money interests that come in here, they've got enough money to make sure all 75. They get signatures from all 75 counties now anyway. So your grassroots person. I mean, your grassroots movement. That's what this is going to hurt. It's going to hurt the people that don't have big money but just want to use populist issues. It's going to make it a lot harder for them.
Yeah, and I think most people would agree, Paul. It should be hard to amend the Constitution, right?
Right.
But when we look at what's happening with this bill, it's making it harder on the citizens' process to amend. But the legislative process, I think that there is a provision in the bill that says instead of a simple majority vote to get something on the ballot, it would take 3/5. But it does not decrease the number of ballot measures the legislature gets to send out. They can still send out 3 each session. And a big part of that is people will have to bring a lawsuit to challenge a citizens initiative by April 15th of the election year. And there's nothing addressed in challenging, and you can't really challenge. There's no real way to challenge a legislature proposed amendment. And so, Paul, it is what it is. It's probably a good thing in theory to say, hey, we're going to make it hard to change the Constitution. But this just makes it much, much harder for citizen-led initiatives. And to your point, people who have a lot of money, they're going to be able to hire the people to come in. It basically shuts the door on if you just want, to form a committee to, whatever the issue is, form a committee, citizen-led, and try to go through this process. It's going to become a lot more expensive, a lot harder process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's it'd be one thing if it attempted to fix some of the problems that they say, but I just don't think it's gonna, it's not really gonna fix. I think if you're upset that medical marijuana got put on there and then the casinos got put on there, written into the Constitution, casinos. If you're upset about that, I don't see how this is going to stop that from happening. It's just my opinion. This solution is not going to stop that, but. Anyway, Josh Waters, it's always great to have you on, sir. And I look forward to having you back on. We'll do the impression of the session. We're going to start those here in the coming months. And anyway, it's always great to have you, sir.
All right, Paul. Thanks.
All right, it's Josh Waters, everybody. All right, so if you're just joining us, we were in the middle of this audio and video of the city, county, and local committee on sanctuary cities, an anti-sanctuary city policy. It was being run, Senator Gary Stubblefield, it's his bill, and then State Representative Brand Smith as well on the House side. They were presenting this to the committee, and this committee, it failed out of the committee. For whatever reason, people didn't vote or they left, okay? And, you got to, is that legitimate or not? Here's the thing, I am reminded of I'm reminded of a Conduit for Action article that highlighted, at the beginning of the session, it highlighted James Sturch, now Senator Sturch, who walked out, remember this? And how this is not, he's probably the most famous one in modern times, but how this has happened a whole lot in the past. And the advice was, if you're going to walk out on a bill because you don't want to vote for it, maybe don't wait till the last minute. Maybe walk out in the middle of the debate. Yeah, be a little more, something inconspicuous. Anyway, let's pick back up with this debate. Let's see. Again, this failed out of the House committee yesterday. Very frustrating that something like this is not a slam dunk for Republicans, the supermajority legislature. Listen.
But number two is that what you just stated, Senator, is just not a fact.
This is Democrat State Representative
you cannot
Love
receive Medicaid services. And then the last but not least, you stated something in regards to illegal immigration and equating them with rape or some sort of criminal piece. And I just find that not of, I guess, decorum, because any person could rape anybody. it doesn't have to make an illegal person could do that, but any citizen could do that to someone else. And so I just don't find that equating a criminal history with someone who is undocumented, to me, that's not the decorum that I would say our state officials should take. I mean, crime is crime regardless of who it comes from. And so to equate that with an undocumented person is just not right.
Can I respond to that? Can I respond to that?
And I would yield.
Yes, please respond.
Thank you, Representative Love. And I agree with you. Just because someone has committed a horrendous crime, even if does not mean all illegals are like that. But the fact of the matter is that we have women, parents in this state who have lost children, and other parents who have children or loved ones who have been disabled or harmed or injured, not because of someone, because of someone who was here illegally. Had that person not been here illegally, those people would still have their children.
Okay. Representative Hawks, you're recognized.
All right, can you stop right
Thank
here?
you, Mr.
And
Chair.
we'll get to Representative Hawks in just a moment. I found this article by actual, it's David Ferguson, and this was at the beginning of the session. Yeah, because see, State Representative Carol Dalby, apparently you can see her right there in the bottom left-hand part of the screen there. That's her. She's already asked one question. Apparently, she got up and left. For whatever reason, she got up and left when it came closer to the vote. And so this was from David Ferguson in all of his 30 years of experience at the Bureau of Legislative Research. He said, yes, legislators have and will continue to run out on votes. Sometimes it is cowardice or poor priorities, but sometimes walking out is a legitimate political tactic used to shut down a meeting for lack of quorum in order to give their side more time to drum up support. Occasionally, a legislator must choose whether to stay for an important vote in his committee or to walk out because he has gotten word that his bill is about to be up for consideration in another committee, and he doesn't want his bill delayed to a future date. Video recording of the legislative meetings is very important, and the Senate and House should be congratulated for expanding the number of meetings to be recorded. And yes, while the video provides important information, longtime observers will also enjoy some of the humorous, embarrassing moments caught on video. I have two pieces of advice for the freshman members of the Arkansas House of Representatives and Senate. First, don't run away from your job. Stay and vote yes, no, or if you are not sure, vote present. Second, if you are going to run away, at least don't wait until the last minute because you will be noticed and you could end up on someone's fail video. Let's continue with the video. Joe, go ahead.
First of all, for the record, I'm not for sanctuary cities, but I have a number of questions about this bill because I think it's
State
trying to
Representative
handle
Spencer
a very
Hawks.
complex issue in a simple two-page manner. But my first question refers back to a statement that you made on line 11 of page 2. You said that this bill prevents people from basically stereotyping or trying to figure out, but really that line 11 allows the officers to do that is the way that I take that. Now, I may be reading that wrong, but they're saying that the municipality cannot ban a person from asking about their citizenship or immigration status. Am I reading that wrong, or will they be allowed to do that?
Well, we vetted this through, Representative Hall, we vetted this through the AG's office, and that line says prevents law enforcement officers from asking a person about his or her citizenship or immigration status. And like I said before, when you're talking about certain heinous crimes that have been committed, then this is not, they're going to be asked. But when it's a minor violation of the law, such as a traffic stop, this says that this says very explicitly that it prevents law enforcement officers from asking a person about his or her citizenship.
So I have to ask this. Then why did the governor not support this bill then, if there's clearly a section in there that doesn't support racial profiling. The governor says he's afraid it may be racial profiling. Folks, that's a leftist talking point. I'm telling you. This is the very reason why the governor supports changing the star on the flag to represent a Native American tribe instead of the Confederacy. That one star out of four. That, Spain, France, the United States, the Confederacy. It's pretty simple. But the governor is so sympathetic to leftist talking points. Again, back in 2010, Governor Jan Brewer just wanted in Arizona. Governor Jan Brewer, remember this? It was a huge controversy, but in Arizona they had this law that was essentially going to say, hey, listen, we're going to take our immigration, what the federal government is supposed to do with immigration, their standard, and we're going to adopt it in Arizona to empower our local law enforcement. Well, it was a huge issue. It divided this country. Barack Obama got involved, and the left intentionally, it's a 4-page bill, I think, and the left intentionally lied about it. The media intentionally lied about it and said it was going to result in people being asked for their papers everywhere they go in Arizona, and that was a lie. And it was going to result in what? Racial profiling. Go look up the headlines. And the left lied about it. People bought it, even though there was a section in the bill, the Arizona law in 2010, saying specifically that race cannot be used as a basis for stopping and asking somebody for their legal alien resident card. Every legal alien in this country has to carry papers with them if they're over 18 or 18 or older. And so that was in 2010. And now in 2019, where we have illegal immigration exploding, we just went through an entire weekend when the radical left in this country put together a doctored video of President Trump calling MS-13 gang members animals, but they doctored it, left the part out about MS-13, and then they put out there that the president called asylum seekers animals. And we have all this going on. They're lying about our president, and then Asa Hutchinson comes out and basically kills the anti-sanctuary cities bill yesterday. That's at least what I can tell, because he said he didn't support it. As soon as he said he didn't support it as it was, he's afraid it was going to racial profile people. Guess what? The bill fails. State Representative, according to reports, Carol Dalby left the chamber. Let's pick this back up. I know we got to go to break here in a minute, but let's continue. Let's listen to Senator Gary Stubblefield yesterday from the committee.
You're recognized for a follow-up.
Okay, because I read on page 1, starting on line 26, it says, as used in this section, sanctuary policy means an order, ordinance, or law enforcement policy, whether formally enacted or informally adopted by custom or practice that, then you have your colon there, and it limits all the way down to 6 that it prevents law enforcement officers from asking a person about his or her citizenship. So that in your bill would be a sanctuary policy, and I understand that it may have been vetted by the AG, but I'm just saying what it really appears that your bill says. Thank you.
Well, okay.
Would you agree?
Well, I would agree that a sanctuary policy under those lines is an ordinance, and it says limits or prohibits a municipal official or person employed by the municipality from communicating or cooperating with federal agencies. That is the definition of what a sanctuary city is. When a city sets up a policy that prevents its law enforcement or officials from cooperating with the federal government as far as a detainer is concerned, that's what that language is.
Okay, Representative Hodges, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this kind of alludes to what Representative Love spoke about, but you had mentioned about the criminal activities by illegals.
Uh-oh.
So
Democrat uses the I word.
Data,
that's not a big
any
deal.
Stats or any information showing any statistical data showing how many people have been raped or murdered by an illegal as opposed to a citizen.
What? What did he say?
We have to have something to go by in order to make our decision.
I couldn't understand what he said.
Is this necessary or not? So, did
he say
is there
poll?
any data that you can provide that show that this is a problem?
Oh, a poll. not like a poll?
There is data, and I
Do you
wish,
have any polls
you give me
about
just a
the
second, I'll
raping
try
and
to pull it
violent
up.
crimes? Polls? That would be opinion, not statistical data. I think
I believe we should, we can be proactive.
Do you have any statistics or polls where people can vote?
Are we being proactive? We have to be being proactive.
We just want to see if you've been a victim of a violent crime from an illegal immigrant, sir. And we won't take too much of your time. Okay,
I'll just give you some statistics that are true for here in Arkansas. There are 79,000 illegal immigrants living in Arkansas. That's they have illegal aliens households add 23,000 students to our local schools.
Okay, stop.
That
We're out of time.
average cost to
I've got to go to
Arkansas is
break. But anyway,
$4,300.
we'll see what happens if they're going to pull this. There's a procedure where the supermajority Arkansas House could just pull this bill right out of committee and put it right on the House floor. It remains to be seen whether or not that'll happen. But if it does, it would probably happen today. We are going to take a break and be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com.
You know, what we see happening in the media right now with Joe Biden, you know, he's basically living in the world that he helped create around what is sexual harassment or what is consent, and you know, that's a whole other show for you.
No, it really is. And I think the difference is, I mean, if there were videos of like Brett Kavanaugh making little girls extremely uncomfortable, you actually had evidence. I mean, here the thing with Joe Biden is, yeah, he's living in a world that he created, but there's also video evidence that just makes, I think, a lot of people very uncomfortable.
Right.
Oh, but anyway, okay. Well, Renee Jolly, I appreciate it. I'm so sorry what happened to your son, and I wish you guys the best, and thank you for using what's obviously something that's negative in your life to try to change it, to make it positive in the end, and make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We're gonna. I'm about to leave. To go down to the Marble Palace. So leaving the Conduit Studios here, where we broadcast from daily out of Northeast Arkansas. I'm going to be driving down to the Marble Palace. Be there, I guess, until they adjourn. They're expected to recess on Wednesday, tomorrow sometime, and then. They'll come back and sine die and officially end their constitutional power they have, and they won't be back for, I guess, another 2 years for a general session. They'll have a little fiscal session next year sometime, but all that's predetermined results because anyway, well, I don't want to get in. It's inside baseball. Anyway, go to conduitnews.com for more updates. Please like us on Facebook, and please subscribe to YouTube, the Conduit News YouTube channel. We want you to subscribe and then click the little bell to receive notifications, please. And that's all the time that we have for today. We will see you tomorrow. Arkansas, be safe.